those who were involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Door with the Grey Rooms podcast. I am your host, Brooks Bigley, and with me tonight is the author of Season 3, Episode 17, Tori Miller, who lost their humanity in a game of artificial cat and mouse. How are you this evening, Tori?
You know what? I'm doing quite well. I am definitely happy from ear to ear.
That's awesome. I'm happy that you're here. This has been a long time coming. I know that you have been a huge fan of the Grey Rooms for a very long time. You've been around as long as I can remember on our Discord as part of our fan community.
The Grey Rooms, as far as like things that I like media-wise, is definitely number one on my list, personally.
And now you're part of the canon of this podcast. How does that make you feel?
It's been a really surreal week. I mean, it's kind of funny, getting comments flooding in saying, oh, I like this story. This story made me, think. I've gotten comments from, people on Discord to, people that I, interact with on, my partner's side of the family, friends. It's surreal.
So everyone's loving the story, huh?
Yep. And honestly, like, this story is just, I mean, I'm not going to toot my own, horn, but it's just,
please toot.
I am so happy about it personally, because if I were to tell myself back in 2018 when I started listening to it, oh yeah, you're going to create a story season 3 and it's going to have, 2 robots and you're definitely going to pull this off, I would have told you you're fucking crazy.
Well, then let's get into that. Like,
sure.
First off, like how. So yeah, you were just a fan. Like, what led you first into wanting to finally write a story for this podcast?
So I was on the fence about it, about writing a story for the longest time, only because I consider myself to be a hobby writer, not exactly I want to do this for my career sort of writing. And, after listening for a while, I kind of learned what works within the rooms and what doesn't. So I was sort of, as I was enjoying my content, I was learning. So kind of like an AI, basically taking a bunch of training information. So fast forward to season 2, it ended up being behind Augie Peterson's, behind the door, that actually sort of pushed me over the edge, because I believe within that interview, it was like, oh yeah, we got this deadline approaching. And then Augie kind of, piped in and she was like, oh yeah, you better do this or I'll rip your face off, something like that. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and do it. You know what? Screw it. And I literally sat with a document and a blank screen and I literally said, crap, now what? So for those that, think, write what you know is a really trite cliche, mantra, I personally think it works, especially for starting out.
Well, so then you had no ambition for this story until, you were listening to the Grey Rooms, kind of getting into the groove of how everything worked. Augie says her piece. Augie's such an uplifting and positive person, by the way. We love Augie.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So she kind of encouraged you in a very nice way to write. So did you sit down and write this specifically just for this podcast?
Yep, specifically for this podcast because, I had no other projects. I honestly did not have any other goals, but this particular story was attempt number 3 at a Grey Room idea.
Would you share kind of topically what your other ideas were if you wanted to?
Oh, yeah. So these I put in a nice little folder on my hard drive that will probably never see the light of the day, but they're called my redacted rooms, which are failed Grey Rooms projects. So one was basically me destroying a space Nazi. That was basically the first one. I don't know why I decided to write that one, but it was therapeutically great for me.
I mean, you have to destroy them everywhere, right? Especially in space.
Oh, yeah, of course. And it was funny because it was literally, the space Nazi was already dead. basically being judged by a goddess and basically being destroyed or recycled into this soul pool, basically. I thought it was a really interesting and yet neat idea, but yeah, it just fell apart, honestly. The
Well, you can always
idea,
go back to it someday.
Yeah, I could. The second idea was a drug trip gone wrong, where it was almost so abstract that there wasn't much of a plot to it. It was pretty much the Cats of the Grey Rooms, where it just did not have a plot. So
and then you settled on this one, then.
yeah. So the reason why I settled on this one was I was just thinking, looking at the rest of the doors, I mean, there's rarely, non-human characters, and there's no sci-fi, or at least
very little,
minimal.
Yeah. Not until this season, basically.
Right. And then it's kind of funny that in previous authors have mentioned, there was no sci-fi at all. So, or minimal. I don't want to say absolutely none, because I feel like I'd be wrong and people will, look at me funny.
Call you out. So was this precipitated by, well, you see, you can mention Augie. I'm trying to think time-wise back when her Behind the Door was, because I know that we put out a call specifically saying, like, we don't get any sci-fi. We don't get any, this genre or that genre. Yep. And I feel like lots of people continue to say, well, this is why we're giving you the sci-fi now. Yep.
And actually one of the best, if I can, I just remember this, one of the best compliments I got from the story, or for the story, was from Mark Taus. Is that him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So from Mark, he basically said, I'm not usually interested in sci-fi, but this kept my attention. And I felt like, yes, this is definitely a testament to my writing.
There you go. Well, it was so... Your characters were very fleshed out. Like, you could feel the motivation behind what Weston wanted, even though he was artificial intelligence. He clearly, understood that there was more, I don't want to say to life, but there was more to his existence than... what did he say? He needed more than just brilliance, is what he said. He needed a physical form.
And that, there was a few lines where I'm like, that wasn't my original line, when we were basically turning it into a script from the prose version. But that is also a testament to how well Michael Zanke basically took, the original characters and made them even better.
Well, he's just working with your material, so you're the one that created it. You're the one that did it all.
Right.
So you knew from the onset that you wanted to have a non-human interacting with this AI, basically. Because I was mentioning in the chat with you earlier the implications here, and I don't think any of us really realized it. I think JM brought it up to us just recently. I don't even know if it was either this morning or the other day, but I was like, wait a minute, guys, wait a minute. We're setting some kind of precedent here.
To JM's credit, that is both brilliant, and I'm also slightly terrified for the implications of how I broke Beckett. I almost equate it to looking at the other authors holding up, toys of both like Beckett and like various Grey Rooms members and being like, hey guys, I broke this.
Well, I just think that if Beckett can go through this death of a non-human, an android that doesn't have a soul, and here we are, we understand, that the project is trying to break these people down for a specific reason, but it's always been humans. The fact that now you've introduced this new tangent of, well, wait a minute, we can do this with non-human. Can Bob just go and copy paste a billion, artificial intelligent personas and then run those all through the Grey Rooms? Like, how does that work? Like, problem solved instantly. We don't need humans anymore. So you've basically broken all of the rooms. Thanks a lot.
You know what? Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime you can at me at Tori_Leyline pod, and definitely contact me over Discord, because that's how you can reach me directly.
Yes, this was the very last episode of the Grey Rooms. We're done now. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Put it on, put it up on the wall. Mission accomplished.
Right.
We have broke Bob or someone.
So you had these characters kind of like little action figures in the sandbox, basically. Like, how did you start to Like, at what point did you know where point A starts the story and then, getting to point B to end it? Like, when did it all start to click and make sense to you? Or was it always just, I'm going to have this android, get conned by this artificial intelligence into giving up its physical form? Like, when did you know that ultimately the main goal of the story was coming out?
So that's the weird part. I really did not have a goal. And actually, I believe, my extended Behind the Door, I mentioned that if I usually play act these ideas out in my head, taking basically both sides or all characters involved. And if I like the situation enough, or if a quip is good enough, I'll include it. So it's kind of weird where I just sort of block out these scenes in my head and sort of daydream almost, and then write it down. And
now, did you do that scene for scene, or how did you determine?
More of a general premise when it comes to this particular room. And the funny thing that I've noticed that I did not quite realize until after hearing this particular story was, for me, subconsciously for this story, it actually is more of an allegory, at least a personal allegory.
Can you elaborate, or?
Yes, of course. So, as you can tell with the name and the voice, obviously something does not quite match up. I identify as non-binary, personally. So, in a weird sense, this in turn basically represents how I definitely feel about gender as a concept, where everything is apart and it could be almost interchangeable, kind of like androids, AIs, the like. So, my exact identity is I look at both, guys and gals and say neither, personally. It's not that I absolutely hate gender, it's just it doesn't work for me, or it just doesn't seem to fit.
That's beautiful. I mean, to put such a personal touch into your writing and to really make such a heartfelt story. I mean, it was, you were rooting for Alice and you're like, nothing's bad going to happen here. But there's so many philosophical aspects
Yes.
to how this all unfolded. Like, even Alice is an android, but refers to her humanity, But then simple things like raising an eyebrow or yawning or something, then saying, oh, but that's just programmed. But I don't think it was. It was part of her learning her humanity. But yes, like showing that it's very fluid, that it can be either or. You did great. You did awesome. I really enjoy that allegory.
Oh yeah.
Do you tend to write stories personally like that, or because I'm not familiar with any of your other works. I haven't been able to read anything else. Your, what did you call your gray room stories? Your redacted room stories.
So I believe both of those were actually submitted to the Grey Rooms, and when season 2 came and gone, I breathed a huge sigh of relief because I thought I was not ready. So, it's just more of I survived was pretty much my thought on season 2. I didn't die of embarrassment. But as far as like a personal touch to these rooms, this was completely by accident. Personally, like I did not realize I was writing something very personal to my life until it got brought to life. And then it was actually very touching to realize, oh, that's where I was back in 2020 or whenever I wrote this.
Right. Yeah, like pre-COVID, basically. I guess that's how we judge our world now, pre and post.
It was the before times. It was the last minute, but in the before times, in my opinion.
Or in the before times, yes. Yeah. I think a lot of authors have also said that, like, someone, let's say Mark Taus, like you were pointing out, like he's written hundreds of stories, but he's really good at like putting the story down as a piece of clay on the table, letting you look at it, right? Versus, let's say you with this story, you really fashioned this piece to be this perfect representation kind of what you were feeling, inside.
Definitely. And the very odd thing about this is my first work ever as far as my writing.
So you've never published anything? You've never had a submission to any other podcast or?
Nope.
Nothing?
Nope, nothing at all.
Congratulations. You have a future ahead of you now.
Thank you. I definitely feel brand new and have that weird plastic smell.
There you go. That goes away in a few months, but enjoy it while it's
It's
there.
like a brand new laptop. You have that weird plastic smell or that new car smell, and it just fades away
Yeah.
after time.
You can buy fake spray, but it doesn't count.
It's not the same.
So then after this, do you feel, bolstered that you're going to start doing more? You're going to branch out into any other, I don't know, genres, or because this isn't like particularly horror. It's definitely suspense.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. We go back and forth. People saying what they think horror truly. I guess horror really just means what it means to yourself. It's kind of like the catch-all name. So this is horror. Forgive me for saying that.
Well,
but
you're fine. You're fine.
do you find yourself writing anything else? Have you written anything else recently? Have you found yourself going in a particular direction now after the success of writing this story?
Yes. Actually, it's kind of funny because horror will always be the genre where I got my start. However, for whatever reason, I just haven't been able to write anything outside of horror. So lately, I've been combining subgenres in order to write what I've been aspiring towards. So lately, it's been, I mean, for my submissions for season 4, I'm just going to go over the subgenres, not give away anything because I like surprises as much as the next guy or gal or them. So the next, one of my favorite genres to write in, what I've discovered throughout my time here in the rooms is comedy horror. And I did not realize I liked it until I basically watched Tucker and Dale versus Evil, pointed at my TV and said, I want that. Like, I definitely wanted that and created one door based on that. And then I did a more serious one because apparently I don't like fun and decided to do more of a slasher type.
So these are things you're currently working on then?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you don't want to give it away. I totally understand.
Yeah. And I got a couple other ideas, but they're more down the line. They also include, this story, this takeover as a premise. It's exciting.
Well, share with me your process. Like, how do you go about satisfying that itch, when you need to write? Like, during your daily, I assume you have a day job.
Yeah,
and
of course.
How does not, I don't want to say horror, how does writing encompass your time outside of work?
So I actually write before I go to work. And I either, right now I'm also going back to school, so it's kind of hard to put in the time to write. But when I do, it's usually before school or on the weekends where I could actually sit down with my story and do a bit of a longer session.
Okay. Like, you're talking like early, like you get up 4 or 5 in the morning before work.
Oh, hell no. I get up at 8 and 9 and have for the rest of my day.
I gotcha. Okay. Because I know some people will do that too. Like, they swear the twilight hours are like the ones to capture the most creativity.
That would be my partner, and I love them, but they are also equally crazy like me. So,
well, you're just yin and yang. That's perfect.
Yep. So, but yeah, like my writing process usually is I have my script on one side because I have a scripting software that I like using, and then a outline where it has the most general points of here's what has to happen in this scene. Here's what the characters do. Now go do it.
So you follow like a rough skeleton, basically.
Yep.
Okay. That's always smart. Yeah, because earlier you were saying, well, I just wrote this story. I was almost thinking you were trying to say you just kind of sat down, you started with the first sentence, and you just kept adding sentences, and you just worked your way through the plot. And I thought, no, there's no way. Like, you must have had some kind of forethought into what your characters were going to do. You must have known in between, how to get to point B.
Right. So, I mean, for this story, as an example, for Alice and Weston, I was basically play acting as both of these characters for a while in my head for about a month. And then I sat down and just said, you know what? These two need to be in the story. and it's going to go for the Grey Rooms. That's how it sort of came to be.
Okay. What did you think of the production of all of it? What did you think of the actors and JM's music and all that?
It is so good. I made sure to try to make the rounds and thank everyone individually for bringing the story to life, because it is like phenomenal, surreal. The delivery was great. I'm glad that they definitely cut some lines from the original prose version, because I realized that didn't quite fit, but this fits better. So
Was it just too much narration, or?
no, some lines just didn't work out. Like, because it's just, I don't know, how do I best describe this? Some things make sense, I guess, in the prose version, or, maybe a more written version, but when it's said out loud, it's either comes across as silly or not as realistic.
Right. Do you feel like this kind of helped you then almost kind of see the ways in which authors specifically write for podcasts? Because you're describing a different scene than you are in a book, let's say, because you need a narrator per se to describe the action of them walking across the room, but they have to do it in a way that they're saying it out loud, kind of, which is not normal talk. Basically, you wouldn't write a story where, and then I walked, you don't say it out loud that you're walking across the room. But in a podcast, the character might say something like, I need to go get that thing over there across the room, because you need to move along, the character, and you can't see the action and you can't describe the action. So you need the character to say the action. Like, what do you value? I think when I ask, like, what do you value? It's such a general question. What do you value in horror? What does horror mean to you? Like, how does horror touch you specifically?
So for me personally, a good horror like movie, podcast, or whatever has to make me think. Because if it's just empty filler content, I could honestly be doing anything else in my life versus, watching whatever or doing whatever. Like, I value intelligence in a product versus, oh, this is fun because something explodes in the background. Well, I mean, that's fun for 5 minutes, but not for 5 hours.
Right. You want to be engaged. You want not have to, but you'd like to follow a plot with depth. Not just the veneer of the action happening, but, what is the reason why we care about these characters? It's not just because they're wearing flashy capes and suits, but because of what they're saying and the mannerisms that they're, showing to each other, their interactions.
Right. And the other thing I kind of realized is, like, for each individual, piece of media, I always ask the question, make me care, or why should I care? When analyzing a piece of media, because if this piece of media does not give me a reason to care, or why should I care about this character, then obviously it has failed in some aspect.
Right. It didn't land properly. So do you have any kind of, secrets that you want to share? Do you have any kind of tips for other people who are, like, right behind you on the path, figuring out their authorship? Like, what worked for you? What could you suggest?
I think the biggest boon to my writing isn't, the ideas or the writing itself. It is the fact that I have a support network to, grow and, work from and evolve. And that is, something that I find, quite, I'm very thankful for, because if, some of the other authors within the Grey Rooms, did not want to read some of my earlier drafts of current doors that I'm working on, then I'd probably be still stuck on the first draft and think it's finished. So
the sense of community, basically.
And that's the other thing I want to throw out too, is if you're a new author, if you are, or if you're, a veteran and you want someone else to look at your work, hit me up on Discord. Personally, like, I'd be more than happy to read your work.
Right. Yeah. We'll add links to get people, into the Grey Rooms Discord. We actually have them in the show notes, but we can highlight them.
Sure.
And then you want to share your tag name on, or or your profile name. What do you go by on Discord?
Oh my gosh. I'm slightly embarrassed that I definitely go by this.
I don't want to put that on you if you don't want to.
I just chose it because I was in a couple other different Discords and I'm like, oh God, why did I choose this? And I'm so lazy I did not unchoose it for some reason, but whatever. It fits.
Okay, if they come to Discord, they'll find you. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, they'll just find the one weird profile.
Not a weird profile. I got to say, like I watch a lot of you authors interacting, in the chats, and to see the camaraderie and just like, shoot this to me, let me read this, let me help you with that, let me add my portion, I'll read this, you read that. It's just, there's a lot of community spirits like that. No, there's no competition. You're not each trying to best the other. You're trying to help each other. It's a really positive. It's like watching the tide, lift all the boats. It's a very positive thing to watch.
And if anything, that particular group alone has helped me out throughout this pandemic, because this pandemic has been a great big ball of shit that not just me, but everyone has to go through. And I'm going to sound very dated, but because of this coronavirus, I honestly wouldn't have looked, so deeply in finding a community to basically latch on to.
So this has brought you closer then, to like-minded individuals.
Definitely.
That's a bonus, man. There's nothing. That's great. Absolutely. Well, and I know that people appreciate you as well, because you, again, like I've said, I've seen you for, I'm thinking back a year and a half or more.
Years.
Interacting. Yes, you've been around since day 2, day 3, basically. And
right.
You've always been a very positive light. You've always been very supportive of all other new people coming in, going, and just general chit chat and offering help. So very much appreciate having you a part of our community. And now you're canon. Your story is canon. You broke Beckett.
Well, you know what? I probably should probably put that as my caption when I finally print out the episode artwork and frame it, and basically right under it, I broke Beckett, and it has no context whatsoever.
There you go. Absolutely.
Or not to make Cassie work any harder or anything, but if somehow that could even be, placed as additional artwork, that'd be so funny. Where it just says, I broke Beckett.
I broke Beckett. We just coin that phrase.
No reason.
Well, as we come to a close here, do you have any other words of wisdom that you do want to share with anyone, whether it be help working with this podcast, or just getting people to focus on writing? Because some people will sit down and they just can't get it out, or they don't know where to start. They wrote something, they don't know where to share it, where to go with it. Are there any little nuggets of wisdom you can dispense?
Here's something that I wish I could do more often, and this is only because I am a bit strong-willed, per se. But one thing that has helped me, with the doors lately, whenever I get stuck, is work on 2 or 3 projects. Reason being is, if one isn't working out for you, you're not out that time. You're not wasting time. Instead, you can just hop off and work on another one and move that one forward.
And always come back when you need to the previous one.
Of course. And for me, my general idea is just to get multiple projects moving, and I'll definitely do that for working on season 5, is at least get all 2 or 3 of them started and then start marching them forward, so that way I'm not boring people with the same draft.
No one's getting bored. I'll never say that. You're a very good writer, and I think that you're at the beginning stages.
Thank you.
Probably a very long path. So you've got nothing to worry about. Just be proud of yourself. Be very proud of yourself.
Thank you. Definitely. I'll drink to that one.
There you go. We'll tip our screwball whiskey back to that.
If I can share a couple things. So
absolutely.
One thing or as far as like projects, I'm definitely working on a few additional rooms. So hopefully I can make an appearance again and show my improvement overall. And I hope it's going to be a good one.
Don't hope, just know.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I
gotta manifest it.
I gotta watch what I say. So the other thing is I'm trying to plan a novella because I realized one of my ideas for a podcast is sort of falling through. And because I was originally planning to make a podcast with one voice actor and just run with it. But I realized I am low on time. So instead I'm trying to figure out how to basically make a novel, novella, something. And sort of get that idea going.
You should put all your effort into that, but we just discussed how you should keep multiple plates going. So make that your priority plate and spin that one real fast while you're still working on all the other ones, because that sounds great, man. That sounds great. Thanks for joining us tonight and proving the Turing test still has a long way to go. I appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat, Tori, and I thank you for sharing your world with us here in the Grey Rooms.
I kind of wanted to get the Grey Room ideas submissions done before the 18th.
Okay, well, I won't say no to that.
I got to get that done first because I got to be disciplined in that regard. But after the 18th, the off season, as I'm going to colloquially say, that I think I can start kicking the can around for that and maybe a few other ideas.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. We have plenty of time in the off season. Very
Definitely.
Good. Well, as usual, the biggest thank you also goes out to our fans and followers who listen daily and spread the good word of Bob. #Stay Grey. Take care and enjoy your evening, Tori.
You as well, Brooks. Thank you.
Thank you. And good night, folks. Bye.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind the Door.